Okay, my next guest, Michael Ortiz from JoJo Tea. What's up, brother?
What's up, fam?
I gotta ask, I've known you many, many years. How does a Cuban kid from Miami get into the tea business?
It all started with an acid trip in FSU.
Really?
Pretty much.
That's all great ideas.
No, man, it was like, like coming from Miami, and like I was an amateur boxer. I was a football player. And then I decided that I wanted to be an actor. Mm-hmm. And I went and studied acting in college.
Yeah.
And in acting school, we do a lot of yoga and we do a lot of movement. Mm-hmm. And we do a lot of breath work. And the breath work is to study voice, and the yoga is to study movement, you know? And like coming from the background of just football and weightlifting and boxing, this perspective like on exercise made me like fascinated, you know? And then of course, like growing up, I was like very kind of sheltered as far as like our, what was available to me and how long I was able to stay out at night and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I went to FSU and met you Columbus guys, and like, the rest is history.
We corrupted you?
Yeah, no, man, it was a mutual corruption. But then I got really lucky and was able to transfer up to NYU. Yep. And I got into their acting school, and I studied acting with Donald Glover, Childish Gambino.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
I was there with him and with Haley Joel Osment, and with the Olsen twins were there. Lady Gaga was there. It was a very special moment. I was there from 2005 to 2008. Mm-hmm. And, while I was there, I became more and more disillusioned with the acting industry. Mm-hmm. I had a theater. Then I don't know how to tell this story without giving a whole biography. So pardon me if I'm like rambling, but yeah, like the acting industry kind of really creeped me out. The more I learned about it, and the more I learned about the kind of favors that you kind of have to be like really good at being a piece of furniture, and or really good at being a prostitute. And if you're really good at doing both of those things, you're going to get far, right? And if you don't really do those things, it's just like, what are you doing in here,
Yeah, you're not doing Harvey Weinstein's casting couch.
Yeah, man, right. Yeah. So like, but my friends and I started a theater company. So like the entrepreneurial thing was, in retrospect, was always like a part of me, Sure. We started a theater company, and we were writing our own shows and producing our own shows and directing our own shows. And like my friends that are really good writers, one of them, Andrew Rabb, he wrote for Blue Bloods, he wrote for House of Cards, he wrote for Umbrella Academy. He would write plays, and with my friend John Albano, and they would write parts for me because they knew like my chops as an actor, they knew what I did well at. So like it was this really interesting ecosystem of artists. But then, in 2008, my dad had a major heart attack. He was in the banking industry, and the banking, it collapsed. So I moved back down to Miami, and I figured that during that time I would just focus on yoga, because I was really fascinated with this practice. It really changed my life. It changed the way that I define exercise, and changed the way that I define spirituality, and created a really interesting bridge between both of those. It's like growing up, it's like you go to church, you do your spirituality thing, and then you go and become a boxer. But like playing with like bridging the gap between those things in the moment of exercise really fascinated me. Yeah. And so I became a yoga instructor. And when I was, I got my certifications and stuff. And then when I was teaching yoga, a lot of students used to ask me if I could teach them how to meditate. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really even know if what I thought was meditation was actually meditation. So I was like, man, I always heard that the Buddhists were the masters of meditation. Mm-hmm. So I went looking for a Buddhist master anywhere in Miami that I could learn from. And I stumbled upon this little place in Coconut Grove that was called Zen Village. Yeah. And there was this Taiwanese lady there. And like, the more I looked into it, the more I saw that she was recognized as a master of Buddhism in the Chinese Chan lineage of Buddhism, in the Japanese Zen lineage of Buddhism, and in the Tibetan Karma Kagyu lineage of Buddhism. They all recognized her as a master. When the Dalai Lama came to the U.S., she hosted him. Nice. So she was a really interesting person from the outside looking in, and I was like, hey, can you teach me meditation? She said, oh, of course. Yeah, no problem. And I studied meditation with her for 3 years. Wow. To the point that I was teaching meditation at the temple. And I kind of like, I was really fortunate. I was able to like develop quite quickly, because I had like, when guests would come to our meditation sessions, then I would lead the meditation sessions, right? And I could like kind of see the way that meditation moved through other people. Yeah. And then when nobody would come, then she would give me direct one-on-one instruction in meditation. And to have direct one-on-one interaction with a master in the act of meditation is very rare, much less for an extended period of 3 years. But what I didn't know is that she was what's called a Taoist Kung Fu tea master.
Okay.
And I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a Taoist Kung Fu tea master, you know? But when I lived in Brooklyn and when I lived in New York, I used to hang out with Rastas a lot. And whenever anybody else made tea, it was a beverage.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever she made tea, it was different. It was like every time that she would pour tea, it felt like the whole city got quiet. And it didn't matter who was drinking the tea. Every time that they would drink her tea, they got high.
Really?
And it was like, it was just like obviously different. There was a gravity to what was going on that was undeniable, you know, and just there. And it started, you know, like I would see her make tea and I was like, oh, that's like interesting. Like there's so much like gravity and this moment is so impactful. And then one day, but I was like, whatever, you know, it's a beverage, whatever, you know. Then this big Tibetan guru came and I was like really like nervous. And like, you know, at this time I was like obsessed with Buddhism. I saw like Buddhism as like this like institution of undeniable, unshakable, ultraviolet. This is the truth, you know. And then this master comes and I was like, oh my God, like this is the lion, you know, like, and he comes and my teacher's talking to him in Chinese and she's like, hey, Michael, make us some tea. And that was the first time that she ever asked me to make tea.
Yeah.
And it was like, make tea? Like, okay, of course, no problem, you know?
Yeah.
So I just like grabbed everything that I had seen her grab.
Yeah.
And I walked through the steps that I had seen her walk through to the best of my memory.
Yeah.
I poured them tea. I put the cups on the table and I turned around and like left. I was like, I don't even want to see what happens here. Like, you know, I just want to and run away, you know? And then when that happened, I started practicing brewing tea, you know, and kind of like just practicing on my own, you know, so that I would be ready the next time that she asked. Like a lot of like Eastern Asian teaching happens like that. It's like they throw you in the fire and then you learn under extreme pressure, you know? Then it's up to you whether or not you want to like continue your education, you know? Which I think is very valuable. So I started practicing on my own, and then like, you know, friends would come over and I'd say, oh, here, let's have some tea. And okay, whatever, you know, and they would like hang out and drink some tea and listen to music and whatever. You know, now we had more to do than just smoke a joint and listen to music.
Right, sure.
Now we could drink some tea and smoke a joint and listen to music. So then, you know, I start practicing and after about a year and a half of practicing that, like, you know, I'm to the point that I could pour tea in the temple and stuff. My teacher's like, hey, it looks like you're like trying to learn how to brew tea. Let me teach you how to make tea. Right. And then she taught me like she broke down this thing called Gong Fu Cha. And Gong Fu, you know, we know Gong Fu like Bruce Lee, right? So what that word actually means, right? Gong Fu, like the root word Gong means labor. Gong Fu means practice with attention to detail and with the goal of mastery. That's Gong Fu. Right. So in the practice of Gong Fu Cha or Gong Fu Tea in its like purest form, right? There's no scale, there's no stopwatch, there's no thermometer, there's no tea bag. You use a lot of tea and you use a little bit of water. But instead of counting minutes, you count your breath. So you pour the water. Yeah. And then you pour it out. And then you taste it. And it's like, oh, that's a little light. Okay, then next time I'll do 2 breaths. Really? Then you wait. 1. Okay, 2. And you pour. And then you taste it. Okay, that's nice. Okay, then the next brew I'll do 2 breaths again, you know?
And that's what she does all the time when she's making tea?
Well, I mean, that's how it starts.
Right.
Because it's really interesting. It's like, you know, like now that I've been brewing tea in this style for like 15 years, you know, it's like it starts very formal. It starts very, okay, I'm counting every breath. I'm with the tea. But then like as years pass and your practice develops and then you start sharing tea with friends and people, then it's like something weird happens where you just know, you just feel it, you know, and your breath is there always as like oh shit, I forgot. Like, I'm like, let's say, you lose track of time because you're talking with somebody, or or the conversation gets interesting and you forget.
Yeah.
You'll be like, okay, whatever. I'll just give it an extra breath and then I'll go. So it's like the relationship to the tea changes, and especially, and then it's interesting because there's like the brewing method of tea, but then there's the tea. And then every tea has like slight differences, So it's like you start with like just your basic method.
Yeah.
Right? Of like counting 5 breaths for the first brew. And then the second brew doing 3 breaths because, the tea is not shy. It's already giving.
Right.
And then you add 1 breath for every brew. That's like the basic starting point. But then when you start playing with it, you start to understand, oh my God, okay, look, the oolong tea from Phoenix Mountain, that like you can't give it more than 2 breaths because it's like so dynamic and so vibrant that if you give it more than 2 breaths, it's gonna like it's gonna like kick you in the tooth when you try it, Then there's other teas that are like really tightly wound up and they're like rolled up or compressed, and then those teas it might need like 5 breaths or 6 breaths to really open up and infuse, So then your kind of universal method starts to tweak based on what tea you're brewing. And then, okay, well, this person is new to tea, so a little bit of bitterness is going to be off-putting for them. So then I'll step back, and then you just dial in and dial in and dial in, and then the next thing you know, it's like there's this concept in martial arts of like Professor Arashiro, Gi Arashiro taught me this concept, and it's like central to his practice, right, of jiu-jitsu, that it's like any practice, we start off unconsciously incompetent. I have no idea that I'm really bad at spearfishing. Right? I had no idea how bad I am at it. Right. Until I get in the water and I try to go underwater, and a fish that's 30 feet away, as soon as I go underwater, is like, the fuck? And it goes away, And I'm like, whoa, I'm really bad at this. I'm like really incompetent at this, right? Then you start practicing and practicing and practicing, and you develop some competence that you're extremely conscious of. You're really conscious of like, okay, I got to do these steps. I got to shoot the ball like this. I got to line up my elbow. You develop very conscious competence, right? And then as you develop this conscious competence and work it and practice and practice and practice, then you develop unconscious competence where you're dribbling the ball and then
muscle
somebody's
memory,
at you and you pop.
Right.
But it swishes.
Yeah.
Because it happens to be that your muscle memory is like so in line that it's unconscious, right? So the tea brewing practice happened like that for me, that like now, I'm brewing tea for my own meditation practice. I was brewing tea for my own meditation practice. I was brewing tea when friends came over, and it just became like, whenever I wanted to have tea, it was like, oh, well, the hot water's right there. And like the tea is right there. And like, okay, like it's just like unconsciously, it's always flowing in my life now, and for a long time now.
So when did you say, hey, I think there's a business here?
Oh man, like I remember the exact moment. Yeah, I was like I was getting into tea. I was interested in tea. Every time I ran out of tea, it was a problem. And because it was like, when I say tea, like we got to take a step back and define tea.
Sure.
Right? What is tea? Because in America right now, like you can take anything and put it in hot water for a little bit and then take it out, and people call that tea. Yeah,
I don't know the difference between matcha and chai. Like I literally don't. I'm not a tea drinker. We are going to drink tea today, but like that kind of stuff, I don't know anything.
It's simple. Like I think that like I like to, when we ask ourselves what is tea, I like to start with the word. So where did the word tea come from? When did people start using this word? The British started using this word in the 1600s. Why? Because Dutch merchants showed them this thing that they had brought back from China along with silk and other stuff, and they said, look, this is tea. Right? Okay, so why did the Dutch merchants call it tea? They found it in eastern China in the Guangdong province, where the local dialect called it cha. Okay, so where did they get it, right? Cha was in Guangdong, but tea actually originates, right, in southwestern China in the Yunnan province, which is like between Tibet and Thailand. It's a pocket of the foothills of the Himalayas, and there's over 6,000 years of documented history of working with tea. And there in Mandarin, it's called cha. So as cha went westward into Portugal, they called it sha. When it went westward into India, they called it chai.
Right.
When it went east, it became che, and then te, and then tea.
then he got to America and they called it Lipton.
Man, no, he's Scottish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a Scottish butcher.
No shit.
He was a Scottish butcher that like he set up a little tea corner in his shop, and everybody was like, "Bro, your meat's fine, but like that's the shit." Is good, yeah. And then he was like, "Oh fuck this," and he just focused on
this thing makes more money. Yeah.
So okay, so what is cha then? Yeah. Right? Okay, there's one plant that's called Camellia sinensis, and this plant is where we get black tea, green tea, white tea, oolong tea, and then there's more rare categories called yellow tea, pu'er, and fermented tea or dark tea. What we call black tea in America, they call red tea in China.
Okay.
Because they have a different tea that looks black like coffee, and that's called dark tea or black tea for them. You know, all those teas come from the same plant, right? And much in the same way that all wine comes from grapes. Red wine comes from grapes. White wine comes from grapes. Malbec is different than Pinot Noir, is different than Cabernet, but they're all grapes.
Right.
Bordeaux is different than Champagne, is different than Napa, is different than Sonoma, but they're all grapes.
Right.
Right? So it's the same exact thing in tea. There's different varietals. There's different man-made cultivated varietals that are called cultivars. There's different growing regions that are informed by their own local diets and their own microclimates, you know. But it's all this one plant, Camellia sinensis.
Interesting.
Right.
What's your go-to tea?
Oh my God, bro! Like it's not like that.
It's not like that. No, it's what you got to be in a meditated state.
It's like asking a DJ what's his go-to album.
Right.
You know, it depends on the moment. It depends on like the tea that I brought for us today is a tea from 2018 that's from seed propagated tea trees that's unoxidized. So it's going to be cooling and refreshing, but it's aged from 2018 in Hong Kong under controlled humidity. So it's going to be rich enough to like provide some depth of flavor and mouthfeel and aromatic finish.
Yeah.
It's not going to be quite as like just clean and refreshing as a green tea. But it's still going to be clean and refreshing because it's an unoxidized tea. And we'll break down what that means. But I want to go back to when I knew that there was a business here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So like when I had tasted different teas with my teacher. And whenever she would give me some teas to take home so I could practice brewing. And then whenever I'd go to a shop, I'd go to the fancy, I'd go to Whole Foods, I'd go to Fresh Market, I'd go to Tivana back in the day. And I'd be like, look, I'm just looking for oolong tea. I'm just looking for Taiwanese oolong tea.
Yeah.
And they'd say, oh, we have this Blackberry Youth tea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Blackberry Youth? Like, what? I'm looking for tea.
Yeah, right.
They're like, no, this is tea. I'm like, no, that's not tea. You know? And then like my teacher made me this tea. It's called Oriental Beauty. I didn't know what it was called. You know, she never told me the names of any teas. She just brewed tea and we would drink them. But when I tasted the tea immediately, as soon as I took a sip, I was like, I need to dedicate the rest of my life to tea. As soon as I sipped that tea for the first time.
Were you in a meditated state when you did it, or you just like it just came to you?
When you practice meditation enough, the meditative state is always, it's like it's part of the way you breathe. It's part of the way you move, you know? When I was practicing meditation at this time at least an hour a day, at least twice a day, at least 6 days a week.
Yeah, so you were.
It's like it's kind of hard to leave the meditative state, which is the goal,
right?
You know, I want my system to be integrated. I want to be grounded, but I also want to have my higher aspiration in check, you know, and like have both of those things in balance, and that's what the meditative state is, you know. But so I didn't know this at the time, but now I know that tea that she served me is from a strand of the tea bush that gets attacked by insects when it's very young. And as a chemical defense to the insects, it develops very concentrated sugars. So I tasted this tea and it's so sweet because it's attacked by insects.
Right.
You know, so it's like that tea is impossible to make it if it's not pure, so organic that insects are biting the leaves.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Interesting. So then you go, that's it. This moment of clarity that said, this is what I got to do. I got to start a business. Walk me through next steps and then the business, right? Is it a direct-to-consumer business? I understand you have a store location.
Yeah.
Walk me through JoJo Tea.
I mean, like you know, I'm sure you've heard of Badia spices.
Yeah.
So Pepe Badia was his wife was one of my teacher's like top students, Nancy Badia, and so Pepe would come around the temple sometimes, you know. And one day I was like, "Hey, Pepe, excuse me, can I tell you something?" I was like, I feel like there's tremendous opportunity in tea. This is 2011.
Yeah.
Like September of 2011. I was like, I feel like there's tremendous opportunity in tea. So many people tell me about how much they love tea, and they've actually never tasted tea. And it's like, if you meet somebody that's like, oh my God, I love wine, I'm all about wine.
Yeah.
And they've only tasted sangria. And they don't even know that they haven't tasted wine yet.
Right.
I'm like, bro, and that's the whole US. Like every
Pretty much,
American tea drinker.
I agree. Yeah.
So I was like, baby, I feel like there's a real big opportunity in tea, in real, whole leaf tea, And he was like, I think you're absolutely right. And I just got back from the World Tea Expo because we're considering bringing some teas into the Badia line. And I went with my assistant, and we got 2 bags, So the next time I come to the office, and he gave me a bag with access to every wholesaler and distributor of tea in the U.S.
Interesting.
Like that. And I was like, oh, okay. And at this time, I didn't know the name of any teas.
Right.
So I would just look through catalogs for okay, that looks familiar. I'll order samples of that. And I just ordered samples of all the teas that looked familiar. And I tasted them, and then ordered the minimum. Yeah. I was a broke yoga teacher and living in my parents' house, and I just ordered the absolute minimum that I could order. And then I would put them in Ziploc bags and try to sell them to friends of mine.
Right.
And people, But I was a 25-year-old yoga instructor. And people were like, bro, you're trying to this bag of tea is $30. I can go buy tea for $10 at the grocery store. Why would I buy this from you? Yeah. And I was like, damn, this is going to be really hard. But then there was this little French bakery. Mm-hmm. There is this little French bakery in Coral Gables. Mm-hmm. It's called Chocolate Fashion.
I think I know where it is. Yeah.
They found out that I was doing this. Uh-huh. And they were like, hey, there's a guy selling tea in the U.S. and we want to taste it. In Miami, we want to taste it. And when I presented them with our tea, they were like, this is the best tea that we've ever tried. Mm-hmm. We want to buy tea from you and serve your tea here. And I was like, oh, okay. And they were like, just send us an invoice. And I was like, yeah, okay. And they're like, how much is it? I'm like, I don't know. This is how much I paid for it. Sure. What do you think is fair? It was literally like that. Yeah. And then go to home and go to Google and what is an invoice? And then, okay, Microsoft Word, invoice number 1, Chocolate Fashion, whatever price they said. Yeah. I had no idea, you know? And I was living in a Buddhist temple, know what I mean? I was so I just I did it like that. I don't even think we saved. I don't even think I hit save. I would wait for them to send us a check so that we can order more tea, just enough to satisfy them. But then it became clear that if I sold them tea, they were reordering in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And if I sold my friends tea, they were reordering in 3 months. Right. And when I sold them tea, now all of a sudden there's 50 people a day that are seeing our logo and that are seeing the product. And they're seeing the product in a place that they already associate with quality and deliciousness. And they trust this place. Sure. And they don't believe that the owner of this place is going to put a tea in front of them that they don't think is legit. Mm-hmm. So then I started, and right around this time, local chef JoJo Rapicavoli was starting a pop-up called Eating House. Okay. And it was a pop-up in Coral Gables that was just amazing. It was this bakery that would close at 3 p.m. Then he would open he would come in at 5, turn it into Eating House, put up graffiti on the walls, play hip hop, and then boom, it was Eating House, and you were having fried chicken with maple syrup and waffles and bacon and this thick pasta carbonara and roasted carrots with espresso beans grated on them. It was Matt, you remember Eating House?
I think I went there once. Yeah,
bro, it was it changed the game. It literally changed Miami. He won Chopped and then came and opened Eating House. Yeah. And I was like, bro, I recognize you from Chopped. I love what you're up to. I have this little tea company. He was like, that's the most amazing tea I've seen in my life. I want to sell it. And then he put us on. Got it. And then it became clear that wait a minute, the people who taste delicious stuff for a living, right, They recognize
the
what this is.
curators of good shit.
The sommeliers,
Right.
the coffee roasters, they recognize what this is.
Yeah.
So then I said, I'm going to stop trying to sell tea to friends of mine. I'm going to focus exclusively on trying to get this into the best restaurants in Miami.
Sure.
And we got into Michael's Genuine. We got into Yardbird. We got into the Swine back in the day, the Kong River House back in the day. We were the exclusive tea provider for Panther Coffee for a long time. Yeah. And then, you know, once we started getting into more hotels, then we started trying to get into the like coffee shops, right? Because they move more tea. Then once we started getting into coffee shops, then we started trying to get into hotels. Then we started, you know, we opened when the one hotel opened in South Beach. They approached us that they wanted to set up a tea program, and their F&B director, or their beverage director rather, was a guy from Chicago. And Chicago is like one of these cities that it's like, oh, the food capital of the world, you know, or of the States. And he came to my tea room and he tasted my tea and he's like, Mike, you have the best tea company in the nation. Like you're gonna do all the tea for the one hotel. I was like, oh, amazing. Yeah. And we set up a program with him where then we were infusing tea into cocktails and making like, you know, like green jasmine tea margaritas, aged tea old fashions, you know, and like really just kind of pushing the envelope of what tea can be. Yeah. And like what the mouthfeel and the aromatic finish of tea can contribute to cocktails. And then, you know, then we started working with the Standard and with the East Hotel for a while. We just started working with a lot more hotels, and that helped us grow, you know. Then we opened up our first like private tasting room in 2016. Because we used to be in a medical building, and it was used to be a doctor's office, so we turned the lobby into a tasting room, and we would do private tastings for like $25 a seating. And the Herald wrote a really nice article about us, and like so we would just do private sessions like this, and then that started to kind of open up the cultural conversation around tea in a different way. That opened up the possibility of people buying retail tea from us to take home to drink, and then really we stayed there until COVID. Which is when we moved into our current space in Little River. Yeah. And now we're continuing to like really expand. Like, I think that now is really like, and it's strange the way that like JoJo Tea was established in 2011. And it feels like we haven't even started yet, because like we're really learning more today that JoJo Tea is not just the leaves. You know, JoJo Tea is just as much the leaves as like the music that's being played. Yeah. The even like the texture of the fabric that we're wearing, the nature of the conversations in the tea room, the food that we eat, the friends that we associate with, and the nature of those friendships. It's all part of JoJo Tea, because that tea is about a moment of peace. And like whether it's for yourself or whether it's for friends and family, it's a moment of peace that you practice and refine. And like, when we look at the history of tea, it's 6,000 years of like the sober refinement of deliciousness. Yeah. You know, and that's remarkable, you know, like we in America, we were introduced to tea through the British, and the British tea habit is born out of a fundamental misunderstanding. Right. And I'll explain it real quick. In the 1600s, the British first get access to tea, and then they notice that the people that are drinking tea don't catch the plague. No shit. So they think, oh my God, this is like a magic medicine. Yeah. We need tea for all of England. It doesn't matter the quality. It doesn't matter how artful it is. We just need tea. Yeah. Emergency. You know what I mean? These people weren't catching the plague because they were the only ones boiling their water, bro. Right. Meanwhile, the British go to war with China. They try to destroy the Chinese tea industry. In the 1850s, they force their Indian colony to grow tea. Again, India starts growing tea in the 1850s. 100% right. You know? Right, yeah. And then that's the tea that we get access to. You know? That's interesting. And then when China underwent the communist revolution, we didn't have access to tea. It was illegal for them to sell tea to us until the 80s. So like really we never had access to these teas until like now. That's interesting. I didn't think of it that way. All right, so the US is a coffee drinking country. When do we start to get a lot more like the rest of the world that has, you know, sort of a tea culture versus a coffee? Like, where do we stand in that pyramid of, I mean, like, of coffee versus tea? And I don't think that it's like I don't think that it's one or the other. You know,
You could have both.
they're friends, bro.
They're friends. Yeah.
They're not like it's like picking like, oh well, you know what? I like rice, so I'm not a pasta guy.
Right.
It's like, what are you talking about, bro?
Right,
You can
right,
have
right.
rice and you can have pasta one day.
Right.
You know, like it's maybe at the same time, you know, it might be a little filling.
Yeah.
But if you have some rice for breakfast, if you have un arroz con huevo frito, if you have rice and fried eggs for breakfast, that doesn't mean you can't have a pasta carbonara at night.
Right.
You know? And like tea and coffee are like the fact that they both have this particular molecule called caffeine.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that like we have to pick one or the other. You know?
Is it an educational thing, you think? Just people don't know enough about tea?
It's educational and experiential more. I think that like education can be very boring, man.
Yeah.
But experience is like alive.
Yeah.
You know, and tea, like I never cared about tea until I sipped exceptional tea.
Yeah.
Brewed the right way. You know, and it's like until that happens, why would anybody care about tea?
Well, it's the same as like with coffee. Like for many years, you know, let's say 70s, 80s, give me a whatever Folgers coffee, I'm going to take it to go, whatever. And then over the course of time, in Europe, you would an afternoon little coffee, or and you go to Italy, and then over the time, just Americans caught up with like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll go to a Starbucks or a little coffee shop and have a venti, whatever. Like,
yeah, espresso culture makes its way in.
It makes it like 100%.
And it's like it's also a matter of like equipment, you know?
Yeah.
Like we get the espresso machines. Starbucks introduces espresso to the US, and then people start, oh wow, okay, I like cappuccinos. I like espresso. I like a latte. And then what happens after that is we have so there's this concept of like first wave and second wave and third wave coffee shops. So like the first wave is Folgers. The first wave is coffee at a diner.
Yeah.
Second wave is now there's Starbucks and there's espresso drinks.
Yeah.
Third wave is now this coffee is from Uganda. It was roasted on this day. And okay, what would you like? You'd like an espresso? Okay, we grind the beans right there so that it's as fresh as possible, and then we make it.
Yeah.
Now, fourth wave is something that's happening now that it's not just it's from Uganda. No, this was grown by the farm of Edgar Rojas Masferrer of Arcane Estate Coffee. It was roasted in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and we're roasting and we're grinding it a la minute and serving it to you in a pour over. That's going to take 8 minutes to execute, but you're going to taste hot blueberry juice.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Where do we stand? What phase are we with tea?
Like
zero.
Like if they're like, yeah, truthfully, like, dude, I've tasted teas that are more than $500,000 a pound.
Really?
Yeah. If there's 10 levels of tea, like we're at where we haven't even gotten, bro. It's
we're like at one.
Yeah. It's because think of it like this, right? The tea is a leaf.
Yeah.
And the in the same way that the tea leaf naturally sprang in China, the tobacco leaf naturally sprang in Cuba. Yeah. And when you smoke a cigar, do you smoke cigars at all?
I don't.
Well, okay, so
I have, but
there's a difference between like, you know, if you see like a Phillies cigar in a gas station, that you look at it and it doesn't look like a leaf. Yeah. That's called a composite material. It's ground up tobacco that's compacted into a paper and that's wrapped up. Then there's a cohiba, that it's a whole leaf wrapped around. Yeah. And the tip of the leaf tastes and smells different than the central vein. That tastes and smells different than the flesh of the leaf. That tastes and smells different than the edge of the leaf. That tastes and smells different than the stem. Yeah. In the same way that steak is always going to be much more complex than picadillo. Right. It's like when you just grind everything and unify it, you lose the nuance and the complexity and the balance. Right. But the leaf is a unit, right? And like every time that the tea leaf breaks, I compare it to like if you're listening to music, if you fold sheets over a speaker, every time that the leaf breaks, it's like you're folding another sheet over the speaker and you're losing more and more. And by the time that you drink the stuff that's just ground up in a bag, and bro, these people love tea. But it's like you're hearing an echo of a trash product that was made by very questionable labor practices, to say the least. You know what I mean? It's like it's
just processed
layer.
crap.
It's like layers of trash, man. Layers of trash from the shit that the bag is made out of to the shit that's in the bag to the way that the people were treated that put the stuff in the bag and that took that off of the bush. It's like it's just layers of trash. You know,
definitely we're at the phase of education, right?
Yeah,
people got to like the podcast today. I mean, I've learned more about tea in the last 20 minutes than I knew in my entire life.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all this talk about tea. You brought some tea. You were kind enough to bring some tea. Let's brew some tea.
All right, for sure.
All right, Michael was nice enough to brew some tea for us today. What do you got, man? What kind of tea is that?
So this is a pretty interesting tea. See, this is
Look at that.
what's left of a cake. So like this is a kind of tea that's called pu-er.
Okay.
And it's like 99% of the world's tea, whether it's green tea or black tea or white tea or oolong tea, 99% of it comes from clones.
Okay.
Okay. And clones are like they don't tend to live very long. They'll live like 70 years. That's like a long time for a clone. But if you plant the seed of Camellia sinensis, the oldest known tea tree that I've been there and I've drank tea from that tree.
Yeah.
The tree is 3,000 years old.
3,000 years old.
Yeah.
Where is the tree?
In Yunnan province of China, just outside of a city called Fengqing. And that tea is about $200,000 a pound.
Are you sure you're Cuban and you're not Asian?
Bro, I have no
Who knows?
But it's $200,000 a pound. It's a 3,000-year-old tree. The tree is like, the thing about the tea tree is that the more you like to make tea, you pluck from the tips of the branches. You pluck the bud and the first two leaves. The more buds you pluck, the more new buds come out. So then that increases the canopy size. So this 3,000-year-old tree is like the size of like a 2-story building, or maybe like a 3-story building. It's big, you know?
Okay.
The trunk is like the size of this room, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. Of like from a sprout, from a tea bush, you know? So the reason that that's important, right? Is because clones develop a root structure that's like a web and only goes down maybe 6 inches. Seed propagated tea trees develop a taproot that go just as deep as the root goes high. So it penetrates topsoil and it pulls minerals up into the leaf. Now that leaf is full of minerals, and a lot of the soil that pu-er comes from has literally never been plowed.
Interesting.
So it's tremendously dynamic. And like we think tea has caffeine. It's true, but tea also has something else called L-theanine, which helps with relaxation and focus. But then on top of that, if you drink tea from wild tea trees in soil that's never been plowed, you're not just getting caffeine and L-theanine. You're getting thousands of other metabolites, of other things in there. That's going to add to the dynamic aroma, flavor, mouthfeel. And there's this concept in Chinese that we don't know yet. It's called cha qi. That it's the energy. You know, qi. We've heard of qi,
so of course,
right?
Yeah.
So and cha is tea. So the qi of the cha, you know? The qi, the energy of the tea. Like that's something that's like a concept that's very new to us.
Yeah.
You know, but there's teas make you feel a certain way. You know what I mean? And that's just as important as probably more important than the flavor profile. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if the tea is gonna make you feel jittery and shitty, then who cares if it tastes great?
Yeah, I don't want nothing to do with it.
Right.
What are 2 or 3 things that people should know about tea? Like as far as like, I'm going to go to the store. I don't know what I'm doing. Just kind of basic rule of thumb.
All right. Step 1, like don't buy tea from
buy it from
JoJo
Tea, but that's
for real.
Like
like don't buy tea from a grocery store. Like it's literally the reason that we exist.
Yeah, of course. Right.
Is because like those teas are trash. Those teas are not good for you. Like those teas are not going to give you. The reason that we drink tea as humans is to have this moment of peace.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people come to the tea room like, oh, I've heard that tea is very healthy. What's the most healthy tea? And those people never they never adopt the tea habit. The people that taste a tea and they're like, that's delicious. I've never tasted anything like that.
Yeah.
How can I get more of that? Those are the people that catch.
Got it.
You know? So like what I would say is like, look for pure teas that are organic and that are delicious. And if you can find seed propagated tea trees, that's a really good sign. You know,
seed propagated tea
trees. That's called pu-er, you know?
Yeah.
And like you can go to sipjojo.com. You can visit us at our website. And there's a small handful of tea vendors around the US that are, you know, understanding this and making some serious
So what are
tea.
you doing right now? Just so the people listening on the podcast, you're breaking it up.
So it's like this. It's like, I think that in order to understand what this tea is, we got to kind of take a step back and define the different categories of tea.
Sure.
Right? So what is black tea, right? I think it helps to start with black tea because if you understand black tea, everything else is a little easier to understand.
It's the most popular here in the U.S. black tea.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Because iced tea was invented in America, was invented in Louisiana.
Okay.
There was a French tea salesman that moved to Louisiana, and he had a bunch of Darjeeling tea, and nobody was interested in drinking it because it's 175 degrees outside. Correct. Right? No, so, but ice and sugar were relatively new luxuries in the 1880s and 1890s. So he sweetened it with sugar, put ice on it, and presented it in Louisiana. People loved it. He took it to the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904, and then it exploded across the U.S., and that became America's first tea drinking culture. Right. You know? America's first like real tea drinking culture, you know? Just like as a uniquely American form, you know? And that, when you ice a beverage, it numbs our taste buds. So there needs to be enough dynamics of flavor to pop. Otherwise, like if you ice a green tea that's brewed correctly, you'll taste very little. It won't really like pop. Yeah. You know? So why does black tea pop? The definition of black tea is, and by the way, I'm not doing any like gong fu tea practice now. I'm just like, this is casual. Yeah. So black tea is if you pluck the tea leaves and then you roll them and bruise them, and then you let them sit. And when you roll them and bruise them, you burst the veins. So the oil and the sugar inside of the veins start to bleed out into the leaf as it bruises, as it gets darker, as it oxidizes. Yeah. Right? And like the classic, what is oxidation? For those of you that don't know, the classic example of oxidation that's usually used is if you slice an apple, it's white and crispy. That's unoxidized apple, right? Then time passes, it starts getting darker, it starts getting mushier. That's oxidation. Right? So if we roll the tea leaf and bruise it, then we let it sit, it starts getting darker and darker and darker until it reaches a point that it can't get any darker, right? At that point, it's considered fully oxidized. Then the leaf is roasted, and that caramelizes all the sugars in it and removes all the water. Okay. That makes sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Totally.
So that's black tea. That's why black tea is malty. That's why black tea is thick. Yeah. That's why you can have black tea with milk, and you could still taste the black tea because the caramelized sugars can stand up to the milk fat. You understand? So if black tea is defined as fully oxidized tea leaves, green tea is defined as unoxidized tea leaves. So they pluck the leaves, they cook them, and they dry them as quickly as possible. That's matcha. That's loose leaf green tea. Yeah, okay. Matcha is just plucked, steamed, and then dried and ground. Yeah. Other loose leaf green teas, most of them are plucked, pan-fired, and then rolled, and then dried, and then ground. That's, or I shouldn't even say rolled. Really, they're shaped. You know?
So, as not a tea drinker, coffee, people put all kinds of stuff in it, creamer, sugar, whatever. Yeah. Do people put stuff in tea? Do you see that?
Like people do all sorts of shit.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. But like is there a common thing that people in the States are putting in their tea?
It's like we have to remember, like we got access to tea from the British culture, and their excuse, or rather their reasoning for tea was, this is a magical medicine. It doesn't matter how good it is. It doesn't matter how artful it is. We need the medicine. Right. Okay. So they saw, like, okay, let me take a step back, right? Because it'll tie it together. So look, do you understand that green tea has 0% oxidation and black tea has 100% oxidation? Right. Okay, so then there's a whole spectrum in between. Yeah. What if a tea is 76% oxidized, right? Or 23% oxidized, right? That whole spectrum is called oolong tea. When tea, the most ancient expression of tea is green tea. Okay. Okay. They would pluck, steam, and then dry and grind, and that was the first expression of tea. Then they discovered pan-firing the tea leaf. Then they discovered rolling the tea leaf, allowing it to oxidize a little bit, and then roasting it, right? And there was very kind of artful expression in Phoenix Mountain, Fenghuangshan, and Wuyi Mountain, where they developed these oolong teas that were oxidized and charcoal roasted, right?
Look at this. Look at this. All this talk about tea. How many cups of tea do you drink a day?
Oh my God. It depends on the good days, bro. Yeah. I don't stop. Last night we were with one of the best chefs in the country, Nando Chang of the Chang family. They just won the James Beard Award for his sister Valerie at Matis. They're some of the best chefs in the country. Yeah. Along with a local DJ, Jai, and a couple good friends of mine, Jai Bowens. We were drinking tea until 3 a.m. last night at the tea room.
No way.
Yeah, man. And listening to DMX.
What a great combination.
It's the best.
All right, what goes on in this tea room? A lot of fun stuff. All right, let me. So, is there a way? Do I have to hold my pinky up? No.
No. Hey, what you want to do is like use your breath to inhale the tea.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to pour the tea into your mouth, right?
Okay.
And so watch first. You want to kind of like use your breath to pull it in first at the front and then at the back. So like this. Watch first. You go, and then swallow. You'll taste the tea a lot more after you swallow.
That is good, man. It's really good.
It's fire, man.
Yeah.
And it's a little like, I push this tea. It's a little bitter up front.
Yeah.
But what we're looking for here is like, how does the tea leave your breath tasting?
Yeah.
Right? Because like here after this sip, let's do like a little experiment.
Okay.
So don't sip yet. Yeah, you swallowed it, right?
Done.
Do you still taste the tea?
No.
No?
A little bit, but not much. No.
Okay. Interesting. Like there's as you drink the tea.
Nah, I was drinking a shitload of coffee before this.
Yeah,
So.
I was too. As you drink the tea more and more, right? You'll find that it'll create like the oil of the tea creates layers on the palate. Mm-hmm. So the more of the tea you drink, the more of the tea you'll taste. And the taste doesn't, it's not just up front. Like I still taste the last sip that I had, like, and I know that I'm going to taste it a long time, right?
Yeah, you're right. Now it takes like a kind of,
you feel it.
Yeah,
it's different.
Of course.
It's like, it's an awareness. So we're not that like, if it's your first time, like you have to kind of dial in, but we're more concerned with how the breath, there's this concept in Chinese called hui gan. Mm-hmm. That means the returning sweetness. That's right. The literal translation. And like, we're more concerned with how the tea is going to paint our breath than how the tea tastes up front. So
it's really good, man.
So we'll deal with a little bit of bitterness in the front end.
Yeah.
If it's going to leave our breath tasting great for the next 2 hours, you know?
That's really good, man.
Yeah. So where were we? We were saying...
well, I was asking you about the tea room. So you have this tea room, which is a very unique concept. Walk me through what happens there. What is it? How's it set up?
I mean, a lot of different things happen. It's like, so there's a couple different things that we do, right? There's this concept that we do, like we do $5 tea classes.
Okay.
That's like open to the public on Mondays, where we just finished, and we do it by season. So we're getting ready to launch our next season. And that's very informal. It's like an hour-long kind of somewhat Socratic method of lecturing and discussing of defining tea. You know, what is tea? And then we have different people. We have an average of like 25 people come in per class. We do it in collaboration with an organization called Black Brew.
Okay.
That's specifically focused on making coffee and tea available and accessible to minority communities and empowering them with the knowledge to be able to effectively barista at coffee shops and eventually manage coffee shops and eventually own coffee shops. That's founded by a group of really amazing people, and one of which works with us, Taylor Morgan. So Taylor and we teach this class together. And the first half of the class is like theoretical, you know, what is tea? The second half of the class is practical, where we, walk through the steps of brewing, and we walk through, okay, look, this is how you brew in a glass pot like this. This is how you brew in something called a gaiwan, which is a porcelain cup with a lid. This is how you brew with a clay pot. And we break down the differences between them. When would you want to use glass? When would you want to use porcelain? When would you want to use clay? I mean, you could use any of those things to brew any tea. But it's almost like you could drink wine out of any wine glass, right? Right. But then what wine is going to operate best out of a champagne glass? What wine is going to operate best out of a big Syrah glass, It's you can still drink the wine out of any glass. Right. But it doesn't mean that you have to get to that, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, if you want to refine, how? Yeah. So that's one thing that we do. And we thought that it would be fun to do that because a coffee shop that I won't name because I don't want to throw shade at them, they offered a $250 latte art class. Okay. Latte art. Yeah. To learn how to go like this with milk. We were like, you know what, bro? We should do a $5 tea class. Yeah. Yeah. We should do a $5 tea class. And then we did it, the other thing that we do then is you can book a private session with me and I'll brew the tea for you, and we'll listen to some records, and we have 2 turntables and a mixer and
I
about
saw that. That's
500
very cool.
records.
Yeah.
500 records on display with another 300 records in the back, and we rotate the
You
selection.
got a great vinyl collection.
Thank you, man. It's mostly hip hop, man. Like, I think that there's something so almost like subversive and beautiful about hip hop on vinyl, because like growing up, it's like I only saw
I never listened to hip hop on vinyl when I was a kid.
dude.
No.
I only saw like the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd on vinyl, but like vinyl was actually like the birthplace of hip hop, and like mixing records and scratching and mixing the beats and looping the break beats. That's like how hip hop started.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's there's something really fun.
You have turntables?
Yeah, we have 2 turntables and a mixer. And
Nice.
yeah, it's great. You know, it's fun. So like a private session, some people want to come in and they just want for us to brew tea for them. They don't want to like learn too much about the tea. They just want to sit down and hang out and have like a date.
Yeah.
And so we facilitate that. We have really nice incense also to make the room smell beautiful. And then we also, but then if you want to like make it more of like an educational experience, we can break it down more so you understand what is the tea that we're drinking, how do you brew it, and why, etc. And those sessions are $77 a person. And then on Saturdays, every Saturday we do a tea party.
Nice.
And the tea party is from 6 to 11. And then on the last Saturday of the month, we stay until 2 a.m.
That's awesome.
And it's like, there's no menu, you know?
You just go, you pay a flat.
You pay $27 to get in the door, and that gives you a cup.
Okay.
When you have a cup, you have access to whatever's being poured.
Very cool.
And we have basically like I will hold down the main tea bar.
Yeah.
And we have another smaller room on the side where one of our employees, like Ryan or Matthew or Taylor, will be holding down that side room.
Mm-hmm.
And we are curating the teas so that everybody in the room is drinking the same tea at the same time.
That's very cool.
And listening to the same music.
Yeah.
And it's like, it does this thing where like, that's like beautiful, where like people come in alone and leave with friends.
Yeah, it takes you to a different place.
You know?
Yeah.
Like your breath tastes the same. You're drinking the same stuff. You're like, it's easy to connect over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's like something that I really wish, like, you know, growing up, that I would have had in Miami. You know, if it's like, if you go to a bar, well, this person is drinking the Louis the 13th, this person's drinking the champagne, this person's drinking the Bud Light, and then like everything changes.
And everybody gives you a different vibe.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like when we're all drinking the same tea and like, you know, it's like, if you want to smoke something, okay. And like, it's just an experience of like people coming together and feeling welcome. And it's like the spirit of tea is about hospitality just as much as it is about heating water and making tea and drinking it. It's about, look, we're going to share this moment, you know?
Yeah. It's a sense of community. And, you know, nowadays, more than ever, coming out of COVID for sure, we need it. Right.
Yeah.
And you're so dialed into your phones and texting and social media that I've got friends. I'm like, oh shit, I've actually haven't talked to that person or grabbed lunch with that person in a year.
Yeah.
But I text them all the time.
And
like,
we share memes.
Yeah. And I'm like, what's the relationship then? You know, that's bullshit. We have to get together. We got to be deliberate about the time that we spend. And when we spend it, it's quality time.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, but it's like, I think that it's like, how to say, like I think it's very easy. Like I'm somebody who used to complain about American culture a lot. You know what I mean? And it's like, bro, like it's not our fault. We haven't had access to these things. We haven't had access to these things that are like literally like a practice of a moment of peace and a practice of coming together. We haven't had access to these things. And our culture is built off of the idea of individual freedom.
Sure.
Which is a beautiful thing, because it's like going to, like, I travel to China, I travel to Taiwan, and they're beautiful and they're magical and they're exceptional. But the concept of like freedom of speech is different. It's different.
Right.
It's like expressing subversive thought there is like, it's not even that it's like, hey, don't do that. It's like, it's more like it's honestly confusing.
Right.
It's like, what?
They've been programmed.
Why? You know, it's like speaking a different language, you know?
Right.
And it's like, there's something really beautiful about coming from a culture that's its grounding principle.
Right.
You know what I mean? And especially not just from America, but from Miami, that's like a taste of the American South in the Caribbean.
Correct.
You know, it's like where else do you get a pastelito de guayaba? Like
nowhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
Maybe Tampa, maybe a couple spots in New Jersey. That's it. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this like Miami feels more like Santo Domingo and it feels like Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But it's still values, these principles of like freedom of speech, you know,
Right.
with like the cultural legacy of figures like Toussaint Louverture and Jose Marti,
Right.
you know, that are just as much a part of Miami's history as Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that like we're at a very unique point in the world of different cultural influences coming together to create very dynamic communities, you know?
Yeah, and you got to remember the ones that came over here, what they came over here for.
Yeah,
right? In
that
our,
vision.
in our case, it's for political reasons more than economic reasons, right? And not all immigrants that come are for political reasons. It's
Of course.
economic and stuff. So
No, and necessity.
it's-
You know, like my family had their business taken from them.
Yeah,
And
you're
then
like,
when they
"Get outta
spoke up
here."
against them, they were fusilaron.
Right.
So like, it was a necessity, and I think that like, you know, a lot of people don't like that about Miami because it builds. It's like we are built by a culture of survivors.
Yep.
That needs to survive. But then the next generations, like we have the opportunities to like actually like bridge some of these gaps. And I think that like we can't be kicking down the ladders behind us, you know? We have to bridge the gaps between the different communities that are in Miami and the communities that were here before we got here.
Yeah.
You know, I think that like that's very much part of our goal, you know?
All right, we're gonna play a game. You ready?
Yeah.
Rapid fire questions.
Oh, that was like GoldenEye.
No, golden. I whipped that thing out. All right, ready?
Yep.
All right, rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind: green tea or black tea?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Both.
Oolong tea.
Oolong tea. Okay. All right.
There was. Do I have to answer one or the other? If I have to answer one or the other, it's green tea.
Okay, green tea. Hot tea or iced tea?
Hot.
Herbal or caffeinated?
Caffeinated.
Caffeinated. Lemon or honey? I know people put lemon and honey in their coffee, don't they?
In their coffee, in their tea.
I mean, I'm sorry, in their tea.
But it's like that's the British, like that's the British, that's bullshit. My answer is bullshit.
Your answer is bullshit.
Yeah.
All right, the best snack to have with tea.
Roasted nuts, dumplings, dim sum.
Dim sum. That's actually a really good one. All
Dumplings,
right.
man.
Very important one. You can't screw this one up. In their prime, Ali or Tyson?
God damn, man.
Oh, your dad's going to get pissed
No,
if you answer it a
man.
certain way.
No, man. I mean, I think that like, I mean, just
In their prime.
just based on the way that Ali handled Floyd Patterson, I'd have to say Ali, man.
Ali in his prime.
Yeah, man.
I'm going with Ali
Tyson
in his
would
prime.
say the same. you
Yeah,
know?
Tyson does say he's the same, and it just sucks that those 3 peak years of his late 20s they didn't fight because we would have seen a very different Ali, you know. And then when he came back,
Yeah, but I mean, I think that it's like the fact that he didn't fight tells us so much. It's like Ali was bigger than boxing, man.
oh
Ali
yeah,
was
yeah,
bigger
yeah,
than
yeah. Of
boxing,
course,
you know what
that's
I
a whole
mean?
different story. Yeah,
It's like Ali was bigger than boxing, man. Ali is
important, brave,
a lion.
a lion.
You know, Ali is a tower of humanity. Ali is like, it's different. You know,
Yeah, special
man.
guy, man. Special
Yeah,
guy.
man. It's different. He's on his own planet. You know.
Where can people find out about you?
Follow us on Instagram. It's Sip JoJo.
Sip JoJo.
SIPJOJO. Visit our website. It's sipjojo.com. Come by the tea room. We're on 76 in Biscayne. If you put on Google Maps JoJo Tea, it'll tell you how to get there, or Waze or whatever.
Yeah.
If it sends you to Lejeune, don't go there. That
Don't
was
go
our
there.
old
That's the
space.
old spot.
Yeah, and if you send us a DM, that's me. So you know, if you have any questions about tea, or if I can be of service in any way, give us a shout.
Yeah, and you're good on social media, man. You're pretty active. You got a lot of followers.
Thank you, man. We've been, you know, I think that like it's a fascinating thing. It's a fascinating like place that we're at culturally, where like, you know, the gatekeepers, just like, you know, if we take it back to music, it's like back in the day you had to get on MTV, you had to get on Power 96, and then
and then that was it.
And it's like, if nowadays it's like,
I love it,
you know,
man.
it's like, you know, with YouTube and like, and it brings its own challenges because it's very difficult for musicians to make real
Right.
money with streaming services. It's, you know, they're getting paid a penny for people to use or fractions of a penny.
Yeah.
For people to listen to their music as much as they want. But it's like, but it does also make it more possible for your music to get heard. So I think like, yeah, it's just like and there's such a proliferation of content and such a proliferation of AI content in specific that like we really value, like we want to just be as pure and raw and authentic and honest as possible, man. Like I don't want to, you know.
And the way to get it out there is literally digital. It's an educational thing for you guys. I mean, like every small business guy we've had come on there, I'm like, most of the guys that we've had that come on are actually really good at digital because that's how I get in touch with them.
Yeah.
But when they're not, you own maybe a successful chain of dry cleaners or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah.
look, man, get digital.
Yeah.
Right? Learn how to, buy online ads, get active on IG, whatever that looks like. Do a little YouTube clips. For not a lot of money, you can get really good and really blow up your brand, really, drive sales, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's amazing how many like little successful businesses around here. And I go and when I go to set up the meeting or something, and I go to try to find their IG page, like they don't even have one.
Nah.
I'm like, man, that's such a lost opportunity.
Yeah, but it's also like it's
an education stuff.
but it's also a kind of tricky because I don't think that like the goal is necessarily to go viral.
No, of course
especially
not.
with tea. It's like there's only like this tea here.
Yeah.
Right. This tea, there's not a lot, like there's not that much of this tea. Like
Right.
if this tea were to go viral, it would sell out, and that would be tragic because like this tea the recipe was made by tea master Vesper Chen out of Hong Kong. It was aged under controlled humidity. Like I don't want a product like this to go viral and then people buy it and they mess it up. They don't value it, but they're buying it because it's a trend.
Right.
It's like a chess match that you can't just like send all of your pieces to go get the king immediately. You also got to defend yourself and you got to protect what you have. And I think that it's like this balance of like getting the word out and then making sure that we're giving the most complete and like authentic experience to the people that are coming. And then we get the word out and then we refine, and then we get the word out and then we refine, and there's always this back and forth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You improve it. Listen, to be an overnight success, it takes many, many years. Right?
Yeah.
And so you just always get a little better. You learn from it. You're patient, and you just play the long game. And when you play the long game, at least for me in my life, it always pays off. Anytime you try to shortcut the system, it always gets sideways on you quick. You might have a couple of quick wins, but
if what you're offering is truly authentic and of depth, there's a reason. There's a reason people have been sipping this stuff for 6,000 years.
Right.
There's a reason that the emperors of China who had access to whatever they want chose this tea from this mountain, from these trees, and they fought to drink this tea.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I want to sip. I don't want to try to convince somebody to taste my blackberry tea. I want to convince them. I want to show you this is a sip that has happened trillions of times.
Right.
This is a sip that has happened trillions of times that we get to taste.
It's amazing.
You know?
Good stuff. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, bro. Cheers, man.
All right, let's drink some tea.
Salud.